We're live, looks like. POV, you have 4 different Chrome tabs open and your computer's going off like a rocket. Chilled. Got like reading aloud. There's no one here. Perfect thing to do, Olaf. Hey, welcome. Excuse me while I try and figure out why the hell my computer's so loud. Here. Turn it down a little bit. Welcome to the reading stream. That's good. That's good. Good vibe stream. Good vibe stream. I'll wait till like one other person shows up. I got my tea. And my gay quiz. Based tea, that's true. I have a nice green tea. I would have had black. Hi Straub, we're doing reading. Sorry if my mic sounds funky. You know, I don't actually know what's wrong with it, if I'm being completely honest with you. Finally listening while I work on my sign. Yeah, that's okay. It'll just be a low-key stream. Where's Ghosty with the mosty? Can you guys hear the music, by the way? Yes. It sounds great right now, but the last Discord is like, shh. Okay, cool. Okay. Yes, that's good. Answering a message. I guess we'll get started. So I had a request. The only one I had a request for. Yeah, congrats to Kyron. Round of applause. The first thing I had a request for was the Elf King, by Johann Wolfgang von Goethe. Adjust my mic. Okay, so this poem, to my knowledge, is about the Elf King who kidnaps like this father's son. I'm not sure if this is the whole thing. It looks rather short, but I'll read it anyways. Okay. Who rides there so late through the night dark and drear? The father it is, with his infant so dear. He holdeth the boy tightly clasped in his arm. He holdeth him safely, he keepeth him warm. My son, wherefore seek'st thou thy face thus to hide? Look, father, the Earl King is close by our side. Thus see not the Earl King, with the crown and with train. My son, 'tis the mist rising over the plain. O come, thou dear infant, O come thou with me. For many a game I will play there with thee. On my strand lovely flowers their blossoms unfold. my mother shall grace thee with garments of gold. My father, and dost thou not hear the words that the Elf King now breathes in mine ear? Be calm, dearest child, 'tis thy fancy deceives, 'tis the wind that sighs through the withering leaves. Wilt go, then, dear infant, wilt go there with me? Me there, my daughters tend thee with sisterly care. My daughters by night the glad festival keep. They'll dance thee, and rock thee, and sing thee to sleep. My father, and dost thou not see how the Elf King his daughters hath brought here for me? My darling, I see it's all right. 'Tis the aged grey willows deceiving thy sight. I love thee, I'm charmed by thy beauty, dear boy, and if thou art unwilling, then force I'll employ. My father, he seizes me fast, for sorely the Elf King has hurt me at last. The father now gallops with terror half wild, he grasps in his arms the poor shuddering child, he reaches his courtyard with toil and dread. The child in his arms finds he motionless, dead. That was the Elf King. Welcome, Mortal Joys. Welcome. Wow, 5 years of showing. Hello, everyone. Okay. Yeah, that was the Elf King. It's originally in German, I think I should mention. Thank you. Okay, now, there was this other site I have called, Project Gutenberg, which has a bunch of older books on it. And I thought we could, because I didn't get any other requests that I could, like, easily read, we could choose one together. I haven't read any, I've read Importance of Being Earnest, but that's a play. I haven't really read any of the others of these. Let me change my posture. I've read Don Quixote. I like that one a lot. Count of Monte Cristo, I've seen the movie before. I think I've read Adventures of Tom Sawyer. Dracula? Do we want to read Dracula? Nice. Are we reading Dracula tonight? Or this evening? It's afternoon. There's an ad. I'll wait. Cool. Dracula time. Dracula. You pull a nice. Watch for Dracula looks good. Okay, we're reading Dracula. We'll read it in HTML. Actually, no, I want images. Hold on. I'm trying to remember what the command to go back is. Hold on. I'm breaking the immersion. With images, brother, with images. Does it download? Oh well. I don't want to read it. I want to read it online. I guess I'll just do the HTML. Okay, hold on. Sorry, guys. If any Twitch mods are watching, we have this. I'm allowed to do this. Chapter 1. Jonathan Harker's Journal.
Bungee gum contains the properties of both rubber and gum, you see.
Oh, that took me out. Oh boy. Ooh, I forgot. Hi, Hisoka. Thank you so very much, Strawberry, for the subscription. No more ads, yeah, no more ads. Thanks for that. Okay, we're Dracula. 3rd of May. Bistrizit. Left Munich at 8:35 p.m. on 1st May, arriving in Vienna early next morning. That's funny. We don't talk about my stream notifications. Welcome, Dazzle. That's funny. It's like the 3rd of May today, isn't it? No, it's the 4th. I lied. But it's very close. Arriving at Vienna early next morning. Should have arrived at 6:46, but the train was an hour late. Budapest seems a wonderful place, from the glimpse which I got of it, from the train and the little I could walk through the streets. I fear to go very far from the station. From the station, as we had arrived late, and we would start at the nearest correct time as possible. The impression I had was that we were leaving the west and entering the east, the most western of splendid bridges over the Danube, which is here of noble width and depth, tucked among the traditions of Turkish rule. We left in pretty good time and came after nightfall to Klausenberg. Here I stopped for the night at the Hotel Royal. I had dinner, or rather supper, a chicken done up some way with red pepper. It was very good, but thirsty. Ma'am, get a recipe for Mina. I asked the waiter, and he said it was called paprika Händel, and that, as it was a national dish, I should be able to get it anywhere along the Carpathians. I found my smattering of German very useful here. Indeed, I didn't know how I should be able to get on without it. Having had some time at my disposal when in London, I had visited the British Museum and made some search among books and maps in the library regarding Transylvania. It had struck me that some foreknowledge of the country could hardly fail to have some importance in dealing with the noblemen of that country. I found that the district he named is in the extreme east of the country, just on the borders of the 3 states, Transylvania, Moldavia, and Bukovina, in the midst of the Carpathian Mountains, one of the wildest and least known portions of Europe. I was not able to light on any map or work giving the exact locality of the castle Dracula, as there are no maps of this country as yet to compare with our own Ordnance Survey maps. But I found that Bistris, the post town named by Count Dracula, is a fairly well-known place. I shall enter here some of my notes, as I may refresh my memory when I take over my travels with Mina. In the population of Transylvania, there are 4 distinct nationalities. Saxons in the south, mixed with them the Wallachs, who are descendants of the Dacians, Magyars in the west, Zekilis in the east and north. I'm going to the latter, who claim to be descended from Attila and the Huns. This may be so, for the Magyars, who conquered the country in the 11th century, they found the Huns settled in it. I read that every known superstition in the world is gathered in the horseshoe of the Carpathians, as if it were the center of some sort of imaginative whirlpool. If so, my stay may be very interesting. Ma'am, I must ask the Count about them all. Sorry, I'm not from Eastern Europe. Yes, it was a Hisoka notification. Wish I had money to give to streamers. Just, hang around. I could add money. Also, please tell me when an ad goes. I don't know when they go. I need to look into it, but that's besides the point. I did not sleep well, though my bed was comfortable enough, for I had all sorts of queer dreams. That's in the antiquated sense. There was a dog howling all night under my window, which may have had something to do with it, or may have been the paprika, for I had to drink up all the water in my carafe, and I was still thirsty. Towards morning, I slept and was wakened by the continuous knocking at my door, so I guess I must have been sleeping soundly then. I had for breakfast more paprika, and a sort of porridge of maize flour, which they said was very mamaglia, and an eggplant stuffed with forcemeat, a very excellent dish, which they call impletata. Ma'am, get the recipe for this dish also. I had to hurry breakfast, for the train started a little late, before 8, or rather it ought to have done so, for rushing at the station at 7:30, I had to sit in the carriage for more than an hour before we began to move. It seems to me that the further east you go, the more unpunctual the trains are. What ought they to be in China? All day long we seemed to dawdle through a country which was full of beauty of every kind. Sometimes we saw little towns or castles at the top of the steep hills, such as we see in old measles. Sometimes we ran by rivers and streams, which seemed to, from the wide stony margin on each side of them, to be subject to great floods. It takes a lot of water running strong to sweep the outside edge of a river clean. At every station there were groups of people, sometimes crowds, in all sorts of attire. Some of them were just like the peasants at home, or those I saw coming through France and Germany, with short jackets and round hats and homemade trousers, but others were very picturesque. The women looked pretty, except when you got near them, but they were also very clumsy around the waist. They all had full white sleeves of some kind or another, and most of them had big belts with lots of strips of something fluttering about from them, like dresses in a ballet, but of course they were petticoats under them. The strangest figures we saw were the Slovaks, who were more barbarian than the rest, with their big cowboy hats, great baggy, dirty white trousers, white linen shirts, and enormous heavy leather belts, nearly a foot wide, all studded with brass nails. They wore high boots with their trousers tucked into them. They had long black hair and heavy black mustaches. They are very picturesque, but they do not look prepossessing. On the stage they would have been set down as some old oriental brand of brigands. They are, however, I am told, very harmless and rather wanting in natural assertion. I think you can put... Okay, you can schedule them? You can have it alert you before they happen. I think you can put them at certain times. Yeah. How do I do that? I might just pause stream to do that. All day long, we seemed to dawdle through a country which was full of beauty of every kind. Oh, no, I read that. It's under affiliate settings? Okay, hold on. It's a little thing called ads. Do you think I can edit it from my phone? I'm gonna try that. Maybe. I'm gonna try because... I don't know if I can actually. At least from my phone. I'm gonna do that though. Okay, hold on. There, you can't see that now, I don't think. Sorry, lads. We'll get back to the funny vampire story in a moment. I'm actually quite liking it. I just like the way they describe Eastern Europe. I'm a big fan of like Central and Eastern Europe, just because I don't know, it's a place I've wanted to visit for a while. Creator dashboard. Hold on. Settings, affiliates. Okay. Scroll. Yeah, I see it. Now how do I? Cool. I get a notif now. Everything else looks good. Cool. You have friends in Eastern Europe? That's cool. Okay. Back to the matter at hand. Okay. It was on the dark side of twilight when we got to Bistris, which was a very interesting place. Being practically on the frontier, for the Borgo Pass leads from it to Bukovina, it had a very stormy existence, and it certainly shows marks of it. 50 years ago, a series of great fires took place, which made... Been a role-playing... Oh, that's cute. Certainly, so a series of great fires took place, which made terrible havoc on 5 separate occasions. At the very beginning of the 17th century, it underwent a siege of 3 weeks and lost 13,000 people, the casualties of war proper being assisted by famine and disease. Count Dracula had directed me to go to Golden Krone Cat Hotel, which I had found, to my great delight, to be thoroughly old-fashioned, for, of course, I wanted to see all I could of the ways of the country. I was evidently expected, for when I got near the door, I faced a cheery-looking elderly woman in usual peasant dress, white undergarment with a long double apron, front, back, of coloured stuff fitting almost too tight for modesty. When I came close, she borrowed and said, The Englishman? Yes, I said, Jonathan Harker. She smiled, and I gave some message to an elderly man in white shirt sleeves, who followed her to the door. He went, but immediately returned with a letter. My friend, welcome to the Carpathians. I'm anxiously expecting you. Sleep well tonight. At the rate tomorrow, the diligence will start for Bukovina. A place on it is kept for you. At Borgo Pass, my carriage will await you, bring you to me. I trust your journey from London has been a happy one, and that you may enjoy your stay in my beautiful land. Your friend, Count Dracula. 4th May. I found my landlord had a constant letter from the Count, directing him to secure the best place on the coach for me, but on making inquiries as to details, he seemed somewhat reticent, and pretended he could not understand my German. This could not be true, because up to then he had understood it perfectly. At least, he answered my questions exactly as if he did. He and his wife, the old lady who had received me, looked at each other in a frightened sort of way. He mumbled out that money had been sent in a letter, and that was all he knew. When I asked him if he knew Count Dracula, he could tell me something of his castle. Both he and his wife crossed themselves in saying that they knew nothing at all, simply refusing to speak further. It was so near the time of starting that I had no time to ask anyone else, for it was all very mysterious and not by any means comforting. Just before leaving, the old lady came up to my room and said in a very hysterical way, "Must you go? Oh, young heir, must you go?" She was in such an excited state that she must have lost her grip of what German she knew, and mixed it up with some other language which I did not know at all. I was just able to follow her by asking many questions. When I told her I must go at once, and that I was engaged on important business, she asked again, "Do you know which day it is?" "Do you know what day it is?" I asked. I answered it was 4th May. She shook her head as she said again, "Oh yes, I know that, but do you know what day it is today?" On my saying I did not understand, she went, "It is the eve of St. George's Day. Do you not know that tonight, when the clock strikes midnight, all evil things in the world will go into full sway? Do you know where you are going? What you are going to do?" She was in such an evident distress that I tried to comfort her, but without effect. Finally, she went down on her knees and implored me not to go. at least to wait a day or two before starting. It was all very ridiculous, but I did not feel comfortable. However, there was business to be done, and I could allow nothing to interfere with it. I therefore tried to raise her up, and said as gravely as I could that I thanked her, but my duty was imperative, and I must go. She then rose and dried her eyes, and taking a crucifix from her neck, offered it to me. I did not know what to do, for, as an English churchman, I had been taught to regard such things as, in some measure, idolatrous, and yet it seemed so ungracious to refuse an old lady meaning so well in such a state of mind. She saw, I suppose, the doubt in my face, for she put the rosary on my neck, and said, "For your mother's sake," and went out of the room. I'm writing this part of the diary whilst I'm in the coach, waiting for the coach, which is, of course, late, and the crucifix is still round my neck. Whether it is the old lady's fear, or the many ghastly traditions of this place, or the crucifix itself, I do not know, but I'm feeling nearly as easy in my mind as usual. If this book should ever reach Mina before I do, let it bring my goodbye. Here comes the coach. Foxanne arrived? Hi, Foxanne. Oh yeah, I love diversity's cool. This is a pro-diversity stream. 5th of May, the castle. The grey of the morning has passed, and the sun is high over the distant horizon, which seems jagged, whether trees or hills I know not, for it is so far off that big things are, and little are mixed. I am not sleepy, and as I am not to be called till I awake, naturally I write till sleep comes. There are many odd things to put down, lest who reads them may fancy that I dined too well before I left Bistris. Let me put down my dinner exactly. I dined on what they call robber steak. Bits of bacon, onion, and beef seasoned with red pepper, strung on sticks and roasted over the fire, in the simple style of London's cat meat. The wine was good in diet, which produces a queer sting on the tongue, which is, however, not disagreeable. I had only a couple of glasses of this and nothing else. When I got on the coach, the driver had not taken his seat, and I saw him talking with the landlady. They were evidently talking of me, for every now and then they would looked at me, and some of the people who were sitting on the bench outside, which they called by a name meaning word-bearer, came and listened, and they looked at me most pityingly. I could hear a lot of words, often repeating queer words, for there are many nationalities in the crowd. So I quietly got my polyglot dictionary out of my bag and looked them out. I must say they were not cheering for me, for amongst them they were Odok, Satan, Pokul, Hell, Sergoika, Witch, Vrolok, and Vukoslak, both of them meaning the same thing, one being Slovak and the other Serbian for something that is either werewolf or vampire. Mem, I must ask the count of these superstitions. When we started, the crowd around the inn door, which had by this time swelled to a considerable size, all made the sign of the cross and pointed 2 fingers towards me. With some difficulty I got a fellow passenger to tell me what they meant. He could not answer at first, but on learning that I was English, he explained to me that it was a charm of God against the evil eye. This was not very pleasant for me, just starting from an unknown place to meet an unknown man, but everyone seemed so kind-hearted and sorrowful, so sympathetic that I could not be touched. I shall never forget the last glimpse which I had of the inn yard and its crowd of picturesque figures, all crossing themselves as they stood round the wide archway, with its background of rich foliage and oleander and orange trees and green tubs clustered in the centre yard. Then our driver, whose wide linen drawers covered the whole front of the box seats, Gotza, as I called them, cracked his big whip over the 4 small horses which went abreast, and we set off on our journey. Take a drink of water. Well, to be fair, mortal joys, they are speaking in different languages. I soon lost sight and recollection of the ghostly fares and the beauty of the scene as we drove along, although I had known the languages which my fellow passengers were speaking. I might not have been able to throw them off so easily, Before us lay a green sloping land of forests and woods, with here and there steep hills, crowned with the clumps of trees or with farmhouses, the blank gable end to the road. There was everywhere a bewildering mass of fruit blossom, apple, plum, pear, cherry. As we drove by, I could see the green grass under the trees spangled with the fallen petals. In and out amongst these green hills of what they here called Meterland ran the road, losing itself as it swept round the grassy curve, or shut out by the straggling ends of pine woods, which here and there ran down the hillsides like tongues of flames. The roar was rugged, but there seemed to be a fly over it with a feverish haste. I could not understand then what the haste meant, but the driver evidently bent on losing no time in reaching Borgo Brunt. I was told that this road in the summertime was excellent, but that it had not yet been put in order after the winter snows. In this respect, it is different from general runs of roads in the Carpathians, for it is an old tradition that they are not to be kept in too good order. Of the old hospadars would not repair them lest a Turk think that they were preparing to bring in foreign troops, and so hasten the war, which was always really at this point, which was always really loading at point. Language is hard. I mean, I could barely speak English. Beyond the green sweeping hills of the Midland rose the mighty slopes of the forest up on the lofty steeps of the Carpathians themselves. Right and left of us they towered, with the afternoon sun falling full upon them, and bringing out all glorious colours of this beautiful range, deep blue and purple in the shadows of the peaks, green and brown where the grass and rock mingled, and the endless perspective of jagged rocks and pointed crags, till these were themselves lost in the distance, where the snowy peaks rose grandly. Here and there seemed mighty rifts in the mountains, through which, as the sun began to sink, we saw now and again the white gleam of falling water. One of my companions touched my arm as we swept round the base of the hill and opened up the lofty snow peak of the mountain, which seemed, as we wound on our serpentine way, to be right before us. "Look! Istinsek! God sees," as he crossed himself reverently. As we wound on our endless way, the sun sank lower, and lower behind us, the shadows of the evening began to creep round us. This was emphasized by the fact that the snowy mountain tops still had the sunset, seemed to glow out with a cool, delicate pink. Here and there we passed Czechs and Slovaks, all in picturesque attire, but I noticed that the goiter was painfully prevalent. By the roadside were many crosses, and as we swept by, my companions all crossed themselves. Here and there was a peasant man and woman kneeling before a shrine, who did not even turn round as we approached, but seemed in self-surrender of devotion to have neither eyes nor ears for the outer world. There were many things new to me, for instance, hayricks in the trees here and there, very beautiful masses of weeping birch with their white stems shining like silver through the delicate green of the leaves. Now and again we passed a later wagon, the ordinary peasant's cart with its long snake-like vertebra, calculated to suit the inequalities of the road. On this were sure to be seated a quieter group of homecoming peasants, the Czechs with their whites, the Slovaks with their coloured sheepskins, the latter carrying lance fashion with long staffs, axes at the end. As the evening fell, it began to get very cold, and the growing twilight seemed to merge into one dark mistiness of the gloom of the trees, oak, beech, and pine. Though in the valleys which ran deep between spurs of the hills, as we ascended through the pass, the dark firs stood out here and there against the background of late-lying snow. Sometimes as the road was cut through the pine woods, that seemed in the darkness to be closing upon us, great masses of greyness, which here and there bestrewed the trees, produced a peculiar, weird, and solemn effect, which carried on through thoughts and grim fancies engendered earlier in the evening, which, when the falling sunset threw into the strange relief the ghost-like clouds among the Carpathians seemed to wind ceaselessly through the valleys. Sometimes the hills were so steep that, Despite our driver's haste, the horse could only go slowly. I wished to get down and walk up them, as we do at home, but the driver would not hear it. No, no, he said. You must not walk here. The dogs are too fierce. And then he added, with what evidently meant grim pleasantry, for he looked round to catch the approving smile of the rest, and you may have enough of such matters before you go to sleep. The only stop he would make was a moment's pause to light his lamps. But the effort he took to look up some semblance of what they were saying, I mean, yeah. Ah.
You're good. Stretch break. Hi, Ghost. Welcome.
We are reading Dracula. But I thought it was very fitting for, the aesthetic of this channel. Everyone seemed to be down for it. Yeah. Where was I? When it grew dark, there seemed to be some excitement amongst the passengers, and they kept speaking to him, one after another, as though urging him. Was the fanfic awful? Next stream. There is a stretch command, by the way. Like, it's one of the things under my stream points. If you want me to stretch, I believe. Hold on. No, he requested Waluigi X Reader fanfiction. Actually, I like Dracula so far. It appeals to me, like my kind of style of writing. Yeah, there's a stand up and stretch. Okay, hold on. Ah. Tell us all the commands. You can literally just... Tell me when the ad is over. I mean, if I'd known, we would have had. I would have. Oh my God. Yeah, you can just. If I do a fanfiction reading stream, you all have to advertise it. I don't know. Mortal Joy said there was an ad. I didn't get an alert about it. I don't know actually how I get the alert, but that's besides the point. Right, as I was saying, if I do a fanfiction stream, I'm not going to sub-goal it. However, if I do a fanfiction stream, you all are going to have to advertise it. Alright? That's the catch. You all have to post about it on your stories, get people to follow my Twitch. I'll read the nastiest fanfiction, anything you recommend, but you have to advertise it. Okay. Anyways. Now, where was I? When it grew dark, there seemed to be some excitement around amongst the passengers. They kept speaking to him, one after the other, as though urging him to further speeds. He lashed the horses unmercifully with his long whip, and with wild cries of encouragement urged them on to further excursions. Then through the darkness I could see a sort of grey patch of light ahead of us, as though they were cleft in the hills. The excitement of the passengers grew greater. The crazy coach rocked on its great leather springs, and swayed like a boat tossed on the stormy sea. I had to hold on. The road grew more level, and we appeared to fly along. Then mountains seemed to come nearer to us on each side, and to frown down upon us. We were entering on the Borgo Pass. One by one, several of the passengers offered me gifts, which they pressed upon me with an earnestness which would take no denial. These were certainly an odd and varied kind, but each of them was given in good simple faith, with a kindly word and a blessing, and that strange mixture of fear-meaning movements which I'd seen at the hotel outside Bistritz, the sign of the cross and the guard against the evil eye. Then, as we flew along, the driver leaned forward, and on each side the passengers, craning over the edge of the coach, peered eagerly into the darkness. It was evidence that something very exciting was either happening or expected, but though I asked each passenger, no one would give me the slightest explanation. The state of excitement kept on for some little time, and at last we saw before us the pass, opening out of the eastern side. There were dark rolling clouds overhead, and in the air, a heavy, oppressed sense of thunder. It seemed as though the mountain range had separated on two atmospheres, and that now we had gotten into thunderous one. I was now myself looking out for the conveyance which was to take me to the Count. Each moment I expected to see the glare of lamps through the blackness, but all was dark. The only light was flickering rays of our own lamps. It was the steam from our hard-driven horses rose in a white cloud. We could see now the sandy roads lying white before us, but there was on it no sign of a vehicle. The passengers drew back with heavy gladness, which seemed to mock my own disappointment. I was already thinking what I had best do when the driver, looking at his watch, said to others something which I could hardly hear. It was spoken so quietly and in so low a tone I thought it was an hour or less with the time. Then turning to me, he said in German worse than my own, "There is no carriage here. The air is not expected at all. You will now come to Bukovina and return tomorrow or the next day. Better the next day." Anything, he says. I do say anything. Unless it's going to get me banned off Twitch. Right. Whilst he was speaking, the horses began to neigh and snort and plunge wildly, so the driver had to hold them up. Then, amongst a chorus of screams from the peasants and a universal crossing of themselves, a caleche with four horses drove up behind us, overtook us, and drew up beside the coach. I could see the flash of our lamps as the rays fell on them, that the horses were coal-black and splendid animals. They were driven by a tall man, with a long brown beard and a great black hat, which seemed to hide his face from us. I could only see the gleam of a pair of bright eyes, which seemed red in the lamplight, and as he turned to us, he said to the driver, "You came early tonight, my friend." The man stammered in reply, "The English air was in a hurry." To which the stranger replied, "That is why. I suppose you wish him to go to Bukovina. You cannot deceive me, my friend. I know too much, and my horses are swift." As he spoke, he smiled, and the lamplight fell on a hard-looking mouth, with very red lips and sharp-looking teeth, as white as ivory. One of my companions whispered to another the line from Burgers Lenore, "Den die Toten reiten schnell, for the dead travel fast." The driver evidently heard the words, for he looked up with a gleaming smile. The passenger turned his face away, at the same time putting out his two fingers and crossing himself. "Give me the luggage," said the driver. With exceeding alacrity, my bags were handed out and put in the caleche. Then I descended from the side of the coach as the caleche was crossed alongside. The driver was helping me with a hand which caught my arm with a grip of steel. His strength must have been prodigious. Without a word, he shook his reins, the horses turned, and we swept into the darkness of the pass. As I looked back, I saw the steam from the horses of the coach by the light of lamps, and projected against the figures of my late companions crossing themselves. Then the driver cracked his whip and called to his horses, and off they swept on their way to Bukovina. As they sank into the darkness, I felt a strange chill. A lonely feeling came over me, but a cloak was thrown over my shoulders and a rug across my knees, and the driver said in excellent German, Do not ban me. Do not ban me.
The night is chill, mine hair, and my master the count bade me take all care of you. There's a flask of Slithwood, the plump brandy of the country, underneath the seat, if you should require it.
I did not take any, but it was a comfort to know that it was there all the same. I felt a little strangely, and not a little frightened. I think had there been any alternative, I should have taken it instead of prosecuting that unknown night journey. The carriage went at a hard pace straight along, and then we made a complete turn and went along this straight road. It seemed to me that we were simply going over and over the same ground again, so I took note of some salient point, and found that this was so. I would have liked to ask the driver what this all meant, but I feared to do so, for I thought that, placed as I was, any protest would have had no effect in the case there had been any intention to delay. By and by, however, I was curious to know how much time was passing. I struck a match, and by its flame looked at my watch. It was within a few minutes of midnight. This gave me a sort of shock, for I suppose the general superstition of about midnight was increased by my recent experiences. I was waiting with a sick feeling of suspense. Yeah. Then a dog began to howl somewhere in the farmhouse far down the road, a long agonized wailing, as if from fear. The sound was taken up by another dog, and then another and another, borne on the wind which was now sighed softly through the pass. A wild howling began, which seemed to come from all over the country, as far as the imagination could grasp it through the gloom of the night. At the first howl, the horses began to strain and rear, but the driver spoke to them soothingly, and they quieted down, but shivered and sweated as though... Thank you, Kitty. Soothingly, and they quieted down, but shivered and sweated as though after a runaway from sudden fright. Then, far off in the distance, from the mountains on either side of us began louder and sharper howling. From that, wolves, which affected both the horse and myself in some way, for I was minded to jump from the caleche and run, whilst they reared and plunged madly, so that the driver had to use all his strength to keep them from bolting. In a few minutes, however, my own ears got accustomed to the sound, and the horses so far became quiet, and the driver was able to descend and to stand before them. He petted and soothed them, and whispered something in their ears, as I had heard of horse tamers doing. And with extraordinary effort from under his caresses, they became quite manageable again, though they still trembled. The driver again took his seat, and shaking his reins, started off at a great pace. Insert on, I mean. This time, after going to the far side of the pass, he suddenly turned down a narrow roadway which ran sharply to the right. I'll go straight. Huh. How are you all doing tonight? Not tonight, I'm sorry. I'm getting slightly hungry, so I think once I finish this chapter I'll end. Hold on. I'm just gonna peer ahead a little bit. Oh. Actually, how long is chapter 2? Long. I could probably manage 2 chapters though. Oh, it's awful. Just leave you hungry. I don't know, too much to do after this, so. Soon we were hemmed with trees, which in places arched right over the roadway till we passed as though through a tunnel, and again great frowning rocks guarded us boldly on either side. Though we were in shelter, we could hear the rising wind, for it moaned and whistled through the rocks, and the branches of the trees crossed together as we swept along. It grew colder and colder still, and fine, powdery snow began to fall, so that soon we and all around us were covered in a white blanket. The keen wind still howled, carried the howling of dogs, though this grew fainter as we went on our way. The baying of the wolves sounded nearer and nearer, as though they were closing ground on us from every side. I grew dreadfully afraid, and the horses shared my fear. The driver, however, was not in the least disturbed. He kept turning his head to the left and right, but I could not see anything through the darkness. Suddenly, on our left, I saw a faint flickering blue flame. The driver saw it at the same moment. He at once checked the horses, jumping to the ground, disappearing into the darkness. I did not know what to do. Last as the howling of the wolves grew closer. But while wondering, the driver suddenly appeared again. Without a word, took his seat, and we resumed our journey. I think I must have fallen asleep and kept dreaming of the incident, for it seemed to be endlessly repeating. And now looking back, it is like a sort of awful nightmare. Once the flame appeared so near the road that even in the darkness around us I could watch the driver's motions. He went rapidly to where the blue flame arose. It must have been very faint, for it did not seem to illumine the place around it, and gathering a few stones formed them into some device. Once there appeared a strange optical effect, where he stood between me and the flame. He did not obstruct it, for I could see its ghostly flicker all the same. This startled me, but as the effect was only momentary, I took it that my eyes deceived me, straining through the darkness. Then for a time there were no blue flames, and we sped onwards through the gloom, with the howling of the wolves around us, as though they were following in a moving circle. At last there came the time when the driver went further afield than he had yet gone, and during his absence the horses began to tremble worse than ever and snort and scream with fright. I could not see any cause for it, for the howling of the wolves had ceased altogether, but then the moon, sailing through the blackened clouds, appeared behind a jagged crest of beetling, pine-clad rock, and by its light I saw around us a ring of wolves with white teeth and rolling red tongues. With long, sinewy limbs and shaggy hair, they were 100 times more terrible in the grim silence which held them than even when they howled. For myself, I felt a sort of paralysis of fear. It is only then a man feels... Sorry, there's something in my lip. Is eat a command? No, because that'd be quite a mess. Times more terrible in the grim silence which held them than even when they howled. For myself, I felt a sort of paralysis of fear. It's only when a man feels himself face to face with such horrors that he can understand their true import. Oh, forgive me. All at once the wolves began to howl, as though the moonlight had had some peculiar effect on them. The horses jumped about and reared, looking helplessly round. With eyes that rolled in a painful way to see, but living of terror encompassed them on every side, and they had perforce to remain within it. I called to the coachman to come, for it seemed to me that our only chance was to try and break out the ring and to aid his approach. I shouted and beat that side of the caliche, hoping, or it's caliche. I think it's Galache, hoping by the noise to scare the wolves from that side, so as to give him a chance of rearing the trap. How he came there, I know not, but I know his voice, raised in a tone of imperious command, looking towards the sound, saw him stand in the roadway. As he swept his long arm, as though brushing aside some impalpable obstacle. Goodbye, mortal joys. The roadway, as he swept his long arm, as though brushing aside some impalpable obstacle, the wolves fell back and back further still. Just then, a heavy cloud passed across the face of the moon, so that we were in darkness. When I could see that the driver was climbing into the Galache, and the wolves had disappeared. This was also strange and uncanny that a dreadful fear came upon me, and I was afraid to speak or move. The time seemed interminable as we swept on our way, now in almost complete darkness, for the rolling clouds obscured the moon. We kept on ascending, with occasional periods of quick descent, but in the main, always ascending. Suddenly, I became conscious of the fact that the driver was the act of pulling up the horses in the countryside of the vast ruined castle, through whose tall black windows came no rays of light, and whose broken battlements showed a jagged line against the moonlit sky. I think that's where I'll end things for now. I have to eat and do other things today, but I hope you enjoyed. I might do this more often as summer rolls around. Yeah. Hope you all enjoyed. Thank you, everyone who joined. If you liked it, I'm not gonna ask you to subscribe or anything, but I would ask you to tell your friends and help me grow. That would be the most appreciative thing I could ask of you. Yeah. Now, as we end on my favorite song from Mario Galaxy, which I think is fitting, I hope you all have a good rest of your day. Thank you for joining.